The clock on the kitchen wall blinked past midnight, its second hand clicking like a reminder of everything he hadn't finished. Ethan Walker braced one hand against the counter, the other cradling his phone as it played voicemail after voicemail. Every sitter he'd begged in the last month had left him the same message: sorry, can't do it. Too much. His thumb hovered over the screen, but he let it fall onto the table with a thud. From the living room came the muffled roar of a pillow war. Tiny feet pounded across the worn rug, followed by a chorus of squeals. Lily and Mia, 4 years old, identical in every way but temperament, were supposed to be asleep an hour ago. Instead, they launched themselves at each other with the reckless energy only children owned. Ethan should have scolded them, but exhaustion tugged at his voice. He leaned in the doorway, rubbing his forehead as feathers scattered in the glow of a single lamp. "Hey," he said softly. The word was drowned in laughter. The truth was, he wasn't angry. He was scared. Scared of the day he couldn't balance it anymore. The code deadlines at his tech job, the bills stacked on the fridge, the endless needs of 2 little girls who deserved more than a father barely holding it together. His late wife's photograph, perched above the bookshelf, watched silently. Ethan turned away before the weight in his chest could split him. The doorbell rang. It startled all 3 of them. The twins freezing mid-swing, Ethan jolting upright, the pillow suspended like a weapon in Lily's tiny hands. He checked the time. Too late for visitors. Too early for miracles. Still, he crossed the room, heart thrumming. The porch light flickered on, illuminating a young woman standing at the threshold. She wasn't what he expected. No harried expression, no resignation. Just calm eyes, a wool sweater soft against the winter air, and snow dusting her boots. A canvas tote hung from her shoulder, like she had come prepared for more than one night. "You're Ethan Walker?" she asked, voice steady, almost curious. He nodded slowly. "You're the sitter." A smile touched her lips, not bright, not nervous, but certain. "Claire." Behind him, Mia peeked out, clutching a stuffed unicorn. "Are you here to play?" Claire crouched instantly, meeting the child's gaze as if nothing else existed. "Only if I get to be the purple one." Maya's eyes widened. "No one ever wants purple." "I do." Something shifted in the air. Ethan felt it. A presence that didn't waver in chaos, a stranger who somehow spoke the language his daughters needed. He cleared his throat, trying not to show the relief creeping through his chest. "Come in," he said. As Claire stepped over the threshold, the storm of the evening paused. The twins' giggles softened into curiosity. Ethan's exhaustion dulled into something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, fragile but real. And though none of them knew it yet, the night had already changed everything. By morning, the house felt different. Ethan woke to the faint sound of humming, an unfamiliar melody drifting down the hallway. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and padded into the kitchen. Claire stood at the stove, hair tied back loosely, flipping pancakes with a practiced calm that didn't fit the chaos she had walked into the night before. Lily sat cross-legged at the table, coloring intently. Mia was perched on the counter, chattering about unicorn kingdoms while Claire nodded as though every detail mattered. For the first time in weeks, Ethan hadn't woken to the sound of arguing or spilled cereal. He lingered in the doorway, unsure if stepping in might break the spell. "Hungry?" Claire asked without looking up. He blinked, caught. "You didn't have to?" "I wanted to." She slid a pancake onto a plate and handed it to Mia, who squealed with delight. Ethan watched, suspicious of the ease with which she'd folded herself into their routine. Sitters before had lasted days, sometimes hours. Claire, in less than 12, had the girls leaning into her like they'd known her forever. It unsettled him almost as much as it relieved him. After breakfast, Ethan prepared to leave for work, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He hesitated at the door. Trust had never come easily, not since everything fell apart. "If they get too much, they won't." Claire interrupted gently. "We'll figure it out." Her confidence should have reassured him, but instead, it left a knot in his chest. She was young, untrained. What if something went wrong and left anyway? He had no choice. Hours later, Ethan's phone buzzed while he was buried in lines of code. He expected disaster. Another sitter quitting, another plea for him to come home. Instead, it was a picture. Mia and Lily crouched beneath a blanket fort, grinning, their faces glowing in flashlight beams. Beneath the photo was a single line: "Today, we conquered dragons." He stared at it longer than he meant to. That evening, Ethan returned home to laughter tumbling out of the living room. Claire sat cross-legged on the floor, telling a story in wild voices while the twins collapsed into giggles. The sight was disarming, almost intimate. He stood in the shadows listening. For the first time in years, the house sounded alive. but the feeling was edged with unease. Claire moved with a grace that didn't match babysitter wages. Her clothes were simple but tailored, her speech polished in a way that hinted at another life. He noticed the way she examined the room, attentive, deliberate, as if she were cataloging more than toys and mess. When the girls finally collapsed into sleep, Ethan found her in the kitchen, rinsing paint, stained cups. "You're not from around here," he said quietly. She glanced at him calm. "No." Silence stretched. He wanted to press, but something in her eyes stopped him. A wall, polite but firm. Ethan folded his arms, unsettled. Whoever Claire really was, she wasn't just a sitter. And if he wasn't careful, he realized she might be something far more dangerous. Someone his daughters could grow to love. The storm rolled in on a Wednesday afternoon. Rain hammered the windows while Ethan typed furiously at his laptop in a crowded office downtown. He was late on a project already. If he missed another deadline, the promotion he'd been quietly fighting for would vanish. His phone buzzed Claire. His chest tightened. Babysitters didn't call unless it was bad, he answered instantly. "Ethan." Her voice was steady, but beneath it ran a threat of urgency. "She's burning up." The office noise faded. "How high?" 1, oh, 3. "She's shivering. I've got her in bed with a cool cloth, but I'm coming home." He was already shoving his laptop into his bag. "No," Claire interrupted. "Finish what you need to." "I'll stay with her." Ethan froze. His instinct screamed to run, to take control. But her tone, calm, certain, held him still. Against everything in him, he whispered, "Call if it climbs higher." By the time he reached home that night, the storm had passed, leaving the air thick and heavy. The house was quiet, too quiet. He pushed the door open and stopped. Mia lay curled in bed, her fever broken, her tiny hand clutching Claire's. Claire sat slumped on the edge of the mattress, head tilted against the wall, eyes closed in exhausted sleep. A half-finished storybook rested on her lap. The sight rooted Ethan to the floor. Not just because she had stayed, but because she had done it with the devotion of someone who belonged there. He had hired her expecting convenience. What he saw now was care, raw, unguarded, unasked for. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from Mia's forehead. The little girl stirred but didn't wake. Claire's grip, even in sleep, never loosened. Something shifted in Ethan then, something dangerous, the wall he had built since loss and betrayal. Since learning that people leave when life gets hard, cracked. He wasn't sure if it was gratitude or fear that filled the space. Maybe both. Later that night, when Claire finally woke and padded into the kitchen, he was waiting. Coffee steamed between them. "You didn't have to stay like that," Ethan said quietly. She shrugged, eyes tired but steady. She was scared. Sometimes that's worse than the fever. He studied her for a long time, words caught in his throat. Finally, "Why are you really here, Claire?" Her hand tightened around the mug. A pause. Then, with deliberate care, "Because sometimes we end up where we're supposed to, even if it doesn't make sense." It wasn't an answer, but the honesty in her eyes disarmed him more than any explanation could. In the silence that followed, a choice grew inside Ethan: trust her and risk everything, or keep the distance that had kept him safe. He didn't know which terrified him more. For the first time in years, Ethan felt himself standing at the edge of something bigger than survival, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to step forward. Saturday brought sunlight, but the house felt heavier than the sky outside. Ethan was fixing the squeaky hinge on the back door when he noticed Claire in the yard with the twins. Lily and Mia darted through the grass with sidewalk chalk, squealing as they sketched a lopsided rainbow across the patio. Claire crouched beside them, smiling, yet there was a distance in her eyes, as if part of her wasn't there at all. That evening, when the girls were asleep, Ethan found her at the table. She was scrolling her phone, screen dimmed, her face pale. Before she noticed him, he caught a glimpse as an email header, bold and cold. "Board succession review, confidential." Claire locked the screen in a snap, sliding the phone aside, but not before Ethan saw the tremor in her hand. "You've been hiding something," he said. Her eyes lifted, guarded. "Everyone hides something. This isn't about secrets. This is about you not being who you say you are." His voice was low but edged with the weight of weeks of suspicion. "Those shoes you wore the first night, the way you speak French without thinking, the way you look at this house like it's foreign. Who are you really, Claire?" For the first time since she'd arrived, she faltered. "I came here to breathe, to find something I'd never had." Her voice cracked but steadied. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I just what?" His arms folded, his chest tightening. "Pretend until it was convenient to leave." Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched between them sharp as glass. Finally, Claire whispered, "I never planned to stay this long. But then there were the girls. You." And suddenly leaving didn't feel like an option. The confession should have softened him. Instead, it cut deeper. He had lived this story before, trusting then losing. He couldn't let his daughters taste that kind of betrayal. "If you're going to disappear," Ethan said quietly, "do it now, before they get hurt worse than they already would." Claire's throat tightened. "I don't want to disappear, but you will," he replied, and for once, his voice broke. "Because people like you always do." Her eyes filled, but she didn't argue. She turned away, walking down the hallway, her footsteps light yet unbearably final. Upstairs, a door creaked. The twins had been listening. Small shadows crouched in the dark, hearing every word. When the bedroom door clicked shut behind Claire, Ethan collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. His daughters loved her. He had begun to love her. And now the house felt hollow again. But somewhere inside, Ethan knew this wasn't the end of her story, or his. The storm had only started. The rain returned the next night, a relentless drumming that swallowed the house in shadows. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, untouched coffee cooling in front of him. Upstairs, the girls had finally cried themselves to sleep after asking the question he couldn't answer: why did Claire leave? He told them she'd be back. He wasn't sure he believed it. The knock came just after midnight. He opened the door and froze. Claire stood there, rain-soaked, hair plastered to her face, eyes burning with something between defiance and despair. She held nothing, no bag, no coat. Just the weight of a truth she could no longer carry. "I lied to you," she said before he could speak. Her voice trembled, but her gaze didn't waver. "My father is Robert Kensington, CEO of Kensington Pharmaceuticals. I'm his daughter. He made me live without money, without privilege, to prove I could survive. That's why I came here. That's why I was your babysitter." The words hit harder than any storm. Ethan's jaw clenched. "So we were just a test? Me, my girls, this life? An assignment for your boardroom?" "No." Claire stepped forward, rain dripping from her sleeves onto the floor. "First, maybe. But then," her voice broke. "Then it became real. Lily's laugh, Maya's stubbornness, the way you watch them like the world lives in their faces. None of that was a test. That was home." Ethan's chest ached, fury colliding with something he didn't want to name. "Do you know what you've done to them? They believed you. They loved you." His voice cracked. "And so did I." Claire's breath caught. For a heartbeat, the room was silent but for the storm. "I was terrified," she whispered, "because the moment I told you, I knew I'd lose everything that mattered." From the staircase came a small voice. "She didn't lie to us." Ethan turned. Lily stood there in her pajamas, clutching Mia's hand. Their eyes were swollen from crying, but steady. "She stayed when I was sick," Mia said, voice shaking but fierce. "She braided my hair. She made pancakes with chocolate chips." "That's not fake." Claire pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely now. Ethan closed his eyes, the weight crushing him. His daughters, their open hearts, their simple, searing truth. He had built walls to protect them, but maybe he had forgotten something. Children don't need perfection. They need presence. When he opened his eyes, Claire was still standing there, trembling, waiting for judgment. He stepped closer, his voice raw. "I don't care about your father. I care about whether you're going to walk away when it gets hard. Because if you do, it won't just break me. It'll break them." But Claire's answer came not in words, but in the way she sank to her knees, pulling Lily and Mia into her arms, holding them as if nothing in the world could make her let go. For the first time, Ethan let the wall collapse. Morning broke soft and golden, spilling across the kitchen like forgiveness made visible. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered in damp earth and the quiet hum of a house that felt different now, heavier with truth, lighter with something new. Ethan moved through the kitchen with practiced hands, pouring cereal into bowls, but his thoughts kept circling back to the night before. The confession. The girls' voices cutting through his anger. Claire on the floor, clinging to them as if her life depended on it. She hadn't left. That mattered more than anything. When she walked in, hair still damp, wearing one of his old flannels she'd pulled from the laundry, Lily and Mia ran to her instantly, wrapping themselves around her legs. Claire crouched, laughing through tears, kissing their foreheads with a desperation that said she wasn't going anywhere. Ethan set the spoon down. He had words, sharp ones, cautious ones, but when he looked at her, they dissolved. What came instead was quieter. "Stay for breakfast." Claire blinked, then nodded as if the offer itself was more than she had hoped for. Days became weeks. Trust rebuilt slowly, like stitching a torn fabric, messy, uneven, but strong. There were no grand declarations, no sudden promises. Just small, ordinary moments, bedtime stories read together, coffee mugs side by side on the counter, laughter echoing again through the halls. One evening, while the girls scribbled drawings at the table, Ethan slid a plate of pancakes across to Claire. She laughed softly. He remembered. Hard to forget, he murmured. The moment hung between them, fragile but real, until Lily piped up. Are we a family now? Silence. Ethan's chest tightened. Claire reached for the girl's drawings, tears threatening. If you'll have me, she whispered. Maya climbed into her lap. Would already do. Something in Ethan broke and mended all at once. He reached across the table, taking Claire's hand. This time, he didn't let go. Weeks later, the four of them stood in the backyard beneath fairy lights and borrowed chairs. No orchestra, no tuxedos. Just laughter, wildflowers, and two flower girls who insisted on being ring bearers too. Claire wore a cream dress, feet bare against the grass. Ethan wore the shirt she once called dangerously domestic. When the vows ended, when the girls threw petals that caught the wind, Claire looked around the yard, then forward toward the man and children who had turned a test into a life. Her life. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the twins were asleep, Ethan and Claire sat on the porch swing. The crickets hummed, the stars scattered above them. I thought I was supposed to prove I could lead a company, Claire said softly. But what I really learned was how to love a family, and be loved back. Ethan kissed her hair, murmuring against the night, that's the only legacy that matters. The porch creaked gently as they swayed, two hands intertwined, while upstairs, the twins dreamed in a house no longer half empty. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt whole.